I don't think it's too outlandish of a statement for me to say that JRPGs for a long while had fallen into strange times. For a while, Final Fantasy had seemingly forgotten what made the series so special. Dragon Quest hadn't seen a fully localized mainline game since the DS, Persona wasn't quite in the public eye as it is now, and so on and so forth. This isn't to say there weren't gems during the PS3, Xbox 360 era, of course, but there was an undeniable decline in the genre during the period. I've been playing a lot of modern games from my backlog as of late, and I kinda started hitting that decline era. So I decided to take a look farther back towards the end of what most call the golden age. The early 2000s was home to a lot of really impactful JRPGs that be remembered fondly even now. Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy X, Tales of Symphonia, and the subject of my curiosity today, The Legend of Heroes: Trails in the Sky. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I had never even heard of this series until a couple years back. One of my close friends, the SHSL Blaze on YouTube, had played one of the newer entries on livestream once, but it still didn't really catch my eye. It wasn't until my friend Gemma the Samurai described it as the MCU of JRPGs that I knew I had to at least give it a closer look, because I hadn't heard of any other franchise being called something like that. Plus, I've been wanting to expand my horizons in the genre for a long time now, because there's quite frankly much more to love than just your Final Fantasies and Kingdom Heartses. Before we begin, I want to thank my Patreon supporters and channel members for supporting the channel. More details on that at the end of the video, and if you find yourself interested in more Trails retrospectives from me, hitting the subscribe button will ensure you'll get to see one for every single game in the series. And without further ado, back to the retrospective. This is Trails in the Sky, the first game in the Legend of Heroes franchise by Nihon Falcom. It was originally released in Japan on the PC back in 2004, but later on it be ported to the PSP. In fact, we didn't actually even get an officially localized version of this game until that PSP version in 2011, if you could believe it. The biggest hurdles that caused such a delay was that Xseed Games didn't acquire the rights to localize it until May of 2010, and that the script of the game was crazy long, around 1.5 million Japanese characters, which of course would be a huge undertaking localizing all that text into other languages. The process was filled with long and exhausting shifts, powering through bug fixes and code rewrites and so much more, but the team was determined to make it as great as it could be. It's hard for me not to appreciate that kind of determination. Before even playing much of the game, it was obvious that the team had had a lot of fun with the work that they were doing despite the workload. They didn't get lazy and they didn't let up. Maybe this is a bit early for me to say this, especially because I hear it gets even better later in the series, but I genuinely think this is one of the best localization jobs I've seen in an RPG. Every bit of text in this game adds to the personality and world building of Trails in the Sky. Practically every single treasure chest you encounter can be interacted with a second time for some hilarious flavor text. Tell me, how did they make these inanimate objects have such blatant personalities? These things are so varied that some seem so emotional that I chose to talk to them again despite having nothing more to offer me, and others seem like they wanted to hold me up at gunpoint if they had the chance. No, that is not a joke. That's how much effort went into these small details the average player would never realize unless by accident. Thankfully, I had you all along for the ride this time, because like I said before, I know for a fact I would have missed this for at least a majority of the game. Oh, and speaking of said game, let's talk about how Trails in the Sky plays, because if I don't start now, I'm gonna go on forever about these minute details, and this video needs some kind of structure. So in Trails in the Sky, you play as Estelle Bright, alongside her adopted brother Joshua in their journey to become full-fledged senior bracers. Bracers being this world's equivalent to adventurers for hire, who do their best to keep cities around the world safe. Having to live up to the legacy of their father Cassius, who is one of the highest ranked bracers in the world, ain't easy, especially since everyone who knows him definitely wants to keep a close eye on the two. This game adopts a turn-based battle system, and because this type of RPG apparently needs something more to it, there's much more to offer here. So Trails in the Sky's battles take place on a grid with both your party and the enemy on opposite sides. The goal is to defeat the enemy as efficiently as possible. I think the biggest draw here is that grid I mentioned though, because how they utilize it allows battles to have so many ways to approach it, keeping the players involved. For example, depending on the enemy's placements, sometimes Joshua won't be able to reach an enemy to attack them because they're out of range of his knives. Estelle, on the other hand, uses a polearm staff in combat, allowing her range of attack to be generally farther than his. There were a ton of times where she clutched out a turn where Joshua couldn't purely because of this. But to be clear, Josh is no slouch either. Despite his limited range, he's much faster than Estelle is, making his turns come before hers. This is a great trade-off for these two because it feels like it does a great job of balancing them out. It's important to optimize their turns and making sure you're paying attention to the turn timeline that's always on the left side of the screen too. You can have the two work together with buffs and debuffs before the enemy's turns arrives, allowing you to even come out unscathed or minimizing the damage taken. While we're on the topic of buffs and debuffs, this is a good time to bring up the other battle mechanics, which are arguably the most powerful features you'll have in battle, those being your arts and crafts. And no, I don't mean your paper cranes. So in this world, everything is basically run by orbments. Everything from the aircrafts we ride to the streetlights that provide. Society has progressed this far because of these devices. They also allow us to utilize orbital energy to produce what's known as magic, which is what we use in battle through our orbital arts. I originally found their execution pretty confusing, and in a way, it still just kinda is, but it's definitely something you'll learn along the way. So in battle, depending on the orbments you have equipped on each character, they'll have access to a variety of different arts. I often made sure everyone had some kind of fire magic equipped, mainly because it was really infrequent for enemies to resist it. After each battle, you'll gain a random amount of sepith, which is basically needed to construct specific kinds of orbments. I really like this because it gives you reason to fight most enemies you come across. Yeah, EXP is nice and all, but sepith gives me something tangible that directly leads back into something I get to pick out at the orbital factory, especially since you don't earn money from battles in this game. These new orbments I have equipped are a product of my hard work, and that feels good, man. But they take this orbment thing even further with how you can only have so many orbments equipped. You start off with one, and as you progress, you'll max out with 6. Then they take that further progression even farther by making which slots you put them in and what orbments are aligned with them matter. So experimenting with their placements and pairings can open up a whole new world of combat and exploration potential. This freaking rocks, man. It gives the player so much control over how they want to engage with the world around them and the battles within. If you don't want to take this orbit stuff so seriously, you don't have to. It will limit the combat potential, but I don't consider this a difficult game at all in my opinion. Well, at least on normal. But even then, that fun that comes from decking out my party with powerful magic to lay waste to my enemies is a huge part of the fun for me, especially when you'll have a maximum of 4 party members to control at once by the end. It gives you a lot to work with. A lot of times they come and go, but what I've always loved about this game is that you know how in other RPGs you gotta remember to take the potions or equipment off a character at a certain point because they'll leave the party due to story reasons and there goes all that stuff they had. This game avoids this by auto unequipping their crap beforehand, so I never have to worry about that, which is great because I was playing this for the first time, so I wouldn't have known when anyone would be leaving the party or when they come back, if at all. I know I had you guys with me and I appreciate all the help you guys gave me on stream, but even then, if I had played this solo, that's the experience I would have had. This whole thing gets better too because when they leave their crap behind, you might as well sell it because when they get back, they'll have better gear already, so you don't even often need to go buy more. The stores often will sell something better, but for the price, the difference is usually never worth it in my opinion. We kind of got off topic again, but back to orbments again. The arts they provide in battle are worth your time in my opinion because how the game works with them is that they have either single target or AoE type effectiveness. Single target is what you'll likely be using for a good chunk of the game, but trying to get yourself a couple of AoE spells is definitely worth it because the game will gradually start making you deal with more and more enemies at once, and it's just not feasible to use so much EP when you can only take them out one at a time. AoE spells may use more EP than single target arts, but it makes up for it by hitting multiple targets. The enemy's placement on the grid is important because an AoE isn't worth it if you can't hit as many as possible. In a way, it reminds me of Chrono Trigger with how important enemy placement was in that game, and properly using your text to hit as many enemies as possible with a single spell. This might annoy some diehard fans, but the combat in this game is much like a fusion between Chrono Trigger and Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem with the grid-based combat field alongside every party member having a specific weapon type they use, and Chrono Trigger for how important placements matter and how physical and magical attacks should be executed for optimal damage output. But that's enough about the complexities behind art. As I said before, you'll also have access to crafts in battle, and as you progress throughout the game, you'll gradually unlock more of these. Engaging in combat will increase your craft points, and each craft you have will use a varying amount. This is big because there's a ton of ways to go about using these. For me personally, I often let it max out because then I can kind of go nuts with them, because they often use 20 to 30 craft points each. So that was definitely quite a few I could set off. For example, Estelle has a craft called Morale, where anyone around her gets increased strength for a few turns, and with as powerful as a party member as Zen is, comboing his arts with her craft would often lead to devastating results. I've mentioned this in other videos, so frequent viewers should know this about me by now, but I love in-battle character growth. Anything in battle that feels like it adds to the character's dynamics, makes their relationships feel more real to me. When I use my team's arts and crafts together like this, it makes me really feel like these guys are friends, really trying to help each other out. Again, I know it's silly, but I can't help but interpret this kind of stuff this way. It's just the way my brain works. Going back to crafts though, there's tons of different kinds of them. Shara can cause an enemy's attack to get delayed, Tita can blind enemies lowering their accuracy by a ton, Chloe can impede enemies and stop them from unleashing attacks. There's a whole slew of crazy things you can do and have them work alongside each other. It's kind of why I think no combination of your party is even remotely bad in this game. Every single party member has something to offer narratively and mechanically. But there is one more thing regarding crafts I haven't mentioned, and that's the most powerful thing about them. They're S-crafts. It may be easier to think of these as ultimate attacks. They can only be unleashed when your craft points are maxed out, and when using it, the gauge will drop back down to 0. I don't think this is great to just hold on to. It's an active part of your arsenal, so I say use it whenever you feel like it. That's kind of what I hated about my run of the game. I feel like I made things harder on myself by relying on my arts too much at times, because I was too scared an encounter would appear where I wished I could have used an S-craft, but I wasted it on a previous battle. In this game, there's no fast traveling, so often you'll be far away from some cities and in turn far away from any inns or hotels where you can rest and get your health, EP, and craft points back. So I found myself trying to sparingly use arts at first, but when the game progressed and encounters had so many more enemies, I had to use my arts, so I found myself low on EP often. But if I had just used my S-crafts, I'd be getting those points back anyways because of all the fights, so it wouldn't really have mattered in retrospect. All this talk of battles just reminded me of the cherry on top of it all though, the music. Buddy, I'm telling you right now, no amount of words I say can properly express how I felt when I heard that battle theme for the first time. That intoxicating kinetic jazz was something I had no idea I needed in my life. Jazz in RPGs isn't anything new, but this soundtrack hits different, man. So much of it perfectly captures the feelings of what we're going through, whether it's braving deep forests filled with monsters, trying to keep a tough face, or exploring industrial cities, paving the way towards the future with orbital technology. The whole soundtrack just makes you want to dance and hum along. There's not a single track I actually disliked in this game, and that's quite a feat to have. Next to the main battle theme though, I'd have to say my favorite is Silver Will. I'm aware it serves greater importance in the next game, but even here in that tough as nails boss fight, I was never tired of it. I never actually wanted the fight to end. No matter how difficult it got, no matter how many times he healed himself, that song injected the freaking goods right into my veins. If the future games have a soundtrack anywhere close to this game's, then I'm really in for some peak fiction. Stepping away from the combat and music and such, the world exploration of this game was really fun. So in this game, like I briefly mentioned before, you get no money from enemy encounters. After all, why would this monster have a wallet? In this game, you get paid by completing missions. Of course, there are mandatory missions for the story, but you'll often be doing most, if not all, side missions too, because this is the primary way you'll get funds. And you know, it's your job after all. Not only that, but there's a ton of benefits to doing them, some that legit blew my mind. I've been wanting to talk about this the whole video. Okay, so completing side quests, you'll often meet a ton of new faces. Not all you'll meet again throughout the story, but this adds so much to the world by making it feel lived in. When I'm not around, these people are still living their lives, doing their day-to-day activities, so getting some insight into their lives was a pleasure to see. But not only do you get to meet some cool people, somehow this game saves that you've done this side quest and carries that over to later games. I don't fully understand how it works, but I love that it's a thing. Again, I'm playing all this blind, so if anyone has greater insight without spoiling me, feel free to enlighten or correct me further. as of writing this, I'm already in Sky SC, the next game. But even before reaching this game, I saw payoff for this sort of thing. Okay, so I had been doing side quests to get some cash, right? So I eventually stumbled upon Ravenue Village, where just beyond it, a monster needed to be beaten. During this time, I met with the village elder, Raisin. Get it? Because he's old. But what blew my mind later on, after becoming friends with him and helping out his village for this completely optional side quest, is that we later on had to meet him through the story. He's not an optional character. So when we met him where what would have been the first time, they acknowledged that we've already met and that the side quest from before had actually happened in universe. That blows my freaking mind. I legit have never played a game that took the writing that far. It would have been so easy to just act as if the side content is just that and doesn't tie into or affect the main story at all. But no, they went the extra mile and gave you such a great payoff for something as small as this. This alone made me ensure I did every single quest in the game from here on out. I only ended up missing 2 in the game, I believe, and those were at the beginning because I was unaware the side quests had individual time limits. I should have realized because it says right there when you pick up the quest. Thankfully, there's no actual timer and it's determined by how much you progress the story after obtaining it. Actually, with this in mind, in order to talk about how they structure how you'll do these quests in tandem with the story, I kind of need to talk about it more, which I'm just now realizing I only lightly touched on earlier. With our 2 newfound junior bracers who have a lot to live up to because of their slightly too famous father, the duo decides to go on their own quest throughout the country, see the individuals of this world, the people they're aiming to protect, the communities they'll frequent, and the connections they'll make. After all, to become a senior bracer, you'll need a recommendation from all the Bracer Guild headquarters from each of the major city-states, so this works together perfectly. Throughout the game, each arc is kinda handled through each of these locations whose names I'm going to butcher: Roland, Bose, Ruan, Zeiss, and Grancel. Within these locations, we meet a variety of really freaking awesome characters, man. Back in Roland, we of course met our main duo, but we also meet Sherazard, a family friend who was trained by their father, but also has been a mentor for them. I love her a lot. Yes, her design is freaking fire, but her personality is so charming. Against bad guys, she looks down on them so hard, and around alcohol, she awakens to her true self. She just becomes more hilarious by the pint. Don't get it twisted though. Shara is a senior bracer, so she's got the wisdom and power to back up her trash talk. We also later on meet Niall and Dorothy, who are a crazy pair of journalists. Niall, who's always hunting for the next big scoop, and Dorothy, who is clumsily following suit. Though I've got to say, the highlight of who we still technically meet in Roland or shortly before Bose is Olivier. I had a hard time choosing who my favorite character in the game is. Joshua, Olivier, and one more person we'll meet soon. But honestly, what's not to like about him? Olivier just tends to steal the show in every scene he's in, whether he's breaking out into song to break up an argument, strolling through on a boat somehow. He just tends to be exactly what the moment needs. They kind of treat him like a stereotypical flirtatious punching bag. He literally flirts with everyone he comes across, but everyone treats him like he's a plague. I mean, I get it. You don't just flirt with people so boldly, especially when you don't know them well. But even when he's not flirting, it's like no one likes him. It's funny because despite being written this way, it's like they knew the players would love him. Not only that, but he's voiced by the legendary Takahito Koyasu, who you may know as the voice of Dio Brando from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Hearing him in such a different kind of setting honestly adds so much to my enjoyment of his character. Speaking of voice acting, I kinda didn't mention this before, but for this video, I played the game on Steam. However, the Steam release doesn't include the official voice acting that was done for the game, so the only way to play it with that official voiceover is through modding, which of course I did, and can genuinely say that it's simple to do and took what may have been a great experience and transformed it into an incredible one. I'm serious, the personality that oozes through the voice work added so much to every single character. Estelle was the star of the show here. Her boisterous personality, her overreactions to misunderstandings, her shy demeanor when she gets embarrassed, all added so much more than what I would have done if I was simply reading the text with no voiceover. This isn't to say that the game is bad by any means without it. In truth, I think no game needs voice acting, but I do think that when voice work is directed well, like most cases these days, I think it does nothing but add to the experience. And while the official voiceover is only in Japanese, and more than okay for me, there is a talented group of fans who are going out of their way to add English voices to the entire game on their own. That's gotta take an immeasurable amount of passion and dedication to set up and execute. I think the talent hit the mark for all the characters that have been voiced so far. If you want to try the game yourself with English voice acting, this may be the way to go. Personally, I'd wait till the project was finished before starting. starting it, purely because when you don't know when the updates will come out and you're getting heavy into the game, you'll feel like you have to stop playing it because your only options from there are to wait for the next update whenever that'll be, go on without voice acting, or play it in Japanese with actors you aren't familiar with since you've been playing it in another language this whole time. Switching language midway through anything is jarring, but that's just my thoughts on the matter. But getting back on track again, the story starts to go in all sorts of different directions, with the airliner Cassius was on being taken over by Sky Bandits, us taking them on numerous times, raiding their headquarters. There's a lot going on. The story goes further with betrayals and tragedy too, and at times I was really surprised they went that far. I'm going to start getting more into spoilers from here on out, so keep that in mind as we move forward. I really recommend playing it for yourself since it's an incredible experience when blind, but okay. Back to spoilers now. They literally have a scene where someone sets an orphanage on fire with the kids still asleep inside. Like, bro, this game has some evil people in it, and they're up to no good basically everywhere. The general idea of what's happening here is as the story progresses, it becomes more and more apparent that there's a ton of turmoil going on within the government, and soon they'll start a coup in an attempt to overthrow the current monarchy. Although the Bracer Guild has a non-interference policy when it comes to international affairs, mainly due to the Bracer Guild existing all over the world, so an organization being privy to and getting involved with multiple governments would just spell bad news. But this time is different, as at the end of the day, the Queen hires the Bracers to assist her, so that gives us the way out we need. Later on, we find out we have another connection to the royal family through Chloe, the girl we met outside of Ruan, best girl of the game and final candidate for being my favorite character. It turns out she's actually the nation's princess, but she wants to live as a normal girl with her identity hidden. I will say though, I think one of the weakest aspects of the story of this game is the motivations of who I guess we can call the main villain here. Basically, during the 100 Days War, Colonel Richard, the founder of the intelligence division of the army, who we meet earlier into the story, it turns out that during the war, he served under Cassius during his time in the army, and with his overwhelming skill at literally everything, they won the war and defended their home. But after the war's conclusion, Cassius had retired and joined the Bracer Guild. This hurt Richard, as he had an extreme fear of what would happen if they were to be invaded again, this time without Cassius's help due to the Bracer Guild's non-interference policy. So after some trials and tribulations and founding the intelligence division, he plotted a coup to overthrow the current queen and have her nephew Duke Dunan act as a puppet ruler. This way he could have Liberl turn into a militarized country. So, okay, I get it. Realistically, with Cassius being this overwhelmingly awesome, I get thinking that without him, the country would be taken over if another invasion occurred. But because of that, instead of, plotting to murder your queen, I would have used my position to try to recruit talented individuals into the service. Not every talented person in the world, is out here working for him, so there's got to be somebody in the background. He founded the intelligence division. They could just scout the country for other talent that isn't being utilized, or he can use his position to try and get exceptions made to the non-interference policy, like maybe during certain categories of war, if say the war is reach a category 5 state. Only then can the Bracer Guild act to defend the country in the war. It may be a hard sell because with that being the case, other countries can also request the Bracer Guild to help them too, which in turn would pit Bracer versus Bracers, which is something I'm guessing they'd want to avoid. But even still, I think there are many different ways he could have went about this, and it just makes how he explains himself just seem so pathetic. You have that little faith in your own abilities, the abilities of your comrades? Cassius is great, of course, but he didn't win that war alone. Maybe this feeling stems from ignorance since I haven't played the other games, and I don't have the foggiest idea of what will happen next. But as far as the single game of FC goes, that's kind of how I felt on the matter. The other major story aspect I wanted to bring up was the romance aspect. So okay, I actually got this spoiled because during the time I was streaming the game, I went on Hulu one day and saw the hour or so long OVA made for the sequel to this game known as Second Chapter, and the banner for it was artwork of Joshua and Estelle kissing. So yeah, hearing that they were brother and sister since I was still earlier on when this happened left me really taken aback. I stuck with the game though, and of course more became clear as I went on. The intro to the game shows Josh being taken in by Cassius, so it was never a matter of them being blood related, but knowing throughout my entire time of this game that they would likely get together had me baffled at how they would make this work, since from what I could tell they seemed genuine enough, and Estelle for one didn't seem to look at Joshua in a romantic sense whatsoever. Joshua is a very reserved and soft-spoken person, but how he treated her like a little sister definitely made me more confused. But if I had to say anything about the relationship with these two, I think it was done as tastefully as possible. While Cassius took in Joshua and called him his son, I think it was more of a way to hide Joshua away from his past, giving him an easy way out of his old life. This game really shrouds his origin in mystery for its entire runtime until the ending, but saving that bit for now, we can see Estelle grow more and more romantically aware of Joshua's existence as a man. She starts off as unaware as possible, but the friends around her acknowledge on numerous occasions things like how popular he is amongst the girls in town and how they don't understand how she could not feel for him despite how attractive he is, even going as far to kind of plant seeds that he could possibly have feelings for her since she's an attractive girl and he lives with her. Things like this made me kind of realize that despite some saying they're siblings, nobody actually thinks of them as such, as if Joshua is just the boy Cassius is looking after and it's just easier to call him his son, hence why they say things like that to Estelle. And after I realized that, I guess it kind of made it easier to accept. There were a lot of cute moments too of Estelle progressively coming to terms with her feelings. Tita, a party member and honorary little sister you meet late into the game, assumes the two were married since they shared a last name but look nothing alike. Chloe, who has to kiss Joshua in the play they're all starring in, didn't feel right having to take part in the moment when considering Estelle's possible feelings. This was when Estelle's outright denial of her feelings became more of a denial of his feelings. He wouldn't want to kiss her because he thinks of her as nothing more than a little sister. Small shifts in her mindset shows the progression she's going through. But in order to talk about the resolution of this, we gotta talk about Joshua and his past. So essentially, Joshua lived an unfortunate life years back. After a major incident in his hometown of Hamel, Joshua was forced to become a killer who felt no emotion whatsoever and would take out his targets set by an organization known as the Ouroboros. He didn't fully do this willingly. He lost his loved ones in Hamel, but after meeting someone named Wiseman, that's when he changed forever. In this game, we don't know the full extent of him, but he's basically been a part of orchestrating everything that's happened in this game. We find out at the end that it was Professor Alba all along, who's in a way been with us for most of our journey too, hiding in plain sight. One day Josh was sent to kill Cassius but failed. Cassius took pity on the child who was forced to live this kind of life and decided to take him in, showing him the kindness and love of a family, restoring his heart. But towards the end of the game, it's revealed Weissman has a sort of power over memories, restoring what bit of them Joshua had lost, also revealing Joshua had unconsciously been acting as a spy for the Ouroboros this entire time. This revelation leads Joshua to leaving the Bracer Guild and his loved ones behind in order to take on the organization alone, but not before confessing that he's loved Estelle this entire time, which just before his confession, she had done the same, making it all the more bittersweet that he drugs her, knocking her out so she can't stop his departure, thus ending Trails in the Sky first chapter. Honestly, I'm surprised I didn't cry. I've proven at this point I'm capable of it. I think the main reason was that I knew this story wasn't over. I knew that things couldn't end here. Things looked bleak, but there was no way Estelle was gonna take this lying down and let Joshua off like this. Man, I freaking loved this game. Everything from the world being so fun to explore, the NPCs bringing it to life and keeping me attached, the scenarios like the play that had me crying of laughter seeing Josh play as the princess, the music setting the mood and tone of every single scenario, the combat giving me a chance to grow closer with my main cast, the orbment system keeping me engaged and building myself to my liking, the main cast being so dang lovable, and the story being so thoroughly well written I can hardly take it. Maybe these are fleeting honeymoon feelings, but it's been nearly 3 months since I've beaten the game and I still feel this way now. That's also why I'm so intimidated on progressing more into the series, because from what I hear, this game is nowhere near the best one, or even top 3 in the series as a whole. If I feel so strongly about this one, I can't imagine how much I'm gonna like the future entries, but in the end, I guess that still leaves me excited to see where the story will go from here. Trails in the Sky first chapter was an incredible experience. Streaming through the whole thing with you all left me incredibly satisfied. I got so lost in playing the game that streams even hit 6 to 7 hours long multiple times. I just couldn't put it down, man. But yeah, that was Trails in the Sky. I figured this was the best place to stop because if I keep going, I have no idea how long this video would end up being. I just hope I did the game at least a bit of justice. As far as the rest of 2022 goes, outside of the start of the Final Fantasy retrospectives, I plan on primarily covering games with only 1 or 2 games in a series. Games like Octopath Traveler and The World Ends With You. Oh, and Kingdom Hearts 2 because I said I would. Next year, I really want to dive into the Trails games, tackle Final Fantasy as I mentioned before, and hopefully Dragon Quest 2. Most of this is subject to change, but I for sure am playing through the Trails games next year. So that's happening no matter what and ain't subject to change. So until then, thank you all so much for watching, and if you haven't already, subscribing to the channel will ensure you never miss content from me again, and much love to the channel members and Patreon supporters for supporting the channel. If you'd like to support me this way too, you can can do so in the description for as low as $1 a month, giving you access to videos early and influence of what videos you want to see first. Thank you all again for watching. My name is KingdomAce, and remember everyone to play some games, have some fun, and enjoy your day today.